Good afternoon, students, and welcome to our second webinar for the unit Professional Development. I am back here myself, obviously Alyssa, and I'm back here with Alison this week. So Alison, give us a bit of a hello.
Hi everyone. I was going to say happy Monday, but it's Tuesday. There you go.
So we'll be taking you through this afternoon the second webinar in professional development. Um, Obviously, the last week's webinar was our very first webinar, and if you guys have had the opportunity, what we've done is we've recorded that and we've uploaded it into the portal. And Alison, if you just want to scroll down a little bit, the guys will be able to see that right at the bottom there it is. You'll see that that is the actual webinar itself. So if you missed last week's webinar or you've missed this week's webinar, feel free to just go directly into this area, and all you have to do is push play and you will hear Alison and I talking for an hour on the very first subject we did last week, which was setting goals, I do believe.
That was it.
Yep, so that was definitely, we had a bit of a big chat about the whole concept of SMART goals and the importance of actually making sure that you make sure your goals that you set for yourself are specific and measurable and achievable or attainable, realistic, and have that time frame associated with them. And I think, Alison, you made a really good comment to the guys last week about it's a very pivotal part of any kind of business is the SMART planning process. And, having a little sticky or a little picture or something just to constantly remind you of, that type of little tool is really essential, I guess, in terms of any workplace, but also relating back to your personal space as well. So we really
That's right. And you'll see it come up again today. So it does pop up quite frequently. So the more you get used to it and sort of, have it in the back of your mind to think along those terms, it will make things so much easier for you and help you probably to feel a bit more organised in your thought processes as well.
Absolutely. So look, anytime you guys feel that you want to have an access to that, we also obviously went through the first lot of learning activities for professional development, which was all about setting goals. So if you're kind of struggling with understanding what's required from the learning activity component, again, click on the webinar that we did last week, and we actually go through each of the questions step by step for you. So you get a bit of an idea as to what you need to add into each of those questions. I think this afternoon we are actually going into the second part of professional development, and today what we'll be looking at is we will be looking at work priorities, and we'll also be looking at the learning component too. Just the heads up with next week will be the third webinar that we'll be doing, and in that third webinar we'll look at professional growth and feedback. So the combination of all three of those webinars will give you enough information and hopefully enough support to really get you through those very first 5 learning activities for professional development. So hopefully you use this tool or this resource, because it will definitely help you move through this process a little bit easier. Cool. Okay, so do we want to have a look at the learning activities to start with, Alison, or do we want to have a bit of a chat about the work priority concepts, or what are your thoughts?
My thoughts on this one for a Tuesday afternoon. Now I've got my head around the fact that it's not still Monday. Yeah, so prioritising at work, it's something that you may or may not already be in the habit of doing, but it's definitely something that you can learn to do and be really effective with it. Again, like we said last week with, setting SMART goals and things like that, if you apply the principles, you'll find that you start doing it automatically in all areas of your life. So this is about work prioritising, but basically it's about how to prioritise what you need to do to achieve your end goal. So we talked about those setting goals last week. You've got small goals every single day. So this is now about if you've got a fairly big goal that's going to take lots of chunks of work to get to your final goal, what priorities can you place on the steps to get there?
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think just pending on from that, the resource material for this particular unit really does give you some strategies or some tools around being able to, um, kind of prioritize your workload so that you do make the most out of the time that you have. And, you do stick to, as you mentioned, Alison, really achieving and getting the outcome in terms of the goals in the workplace. So if you wanted to just maybe scroll back to the learning, the actual resource material, um, I think there's a couple of, well, there's a bit of a tool in there that we can have a look at, and let's have a quick look. Yeah, if you just go back up to the, ooh, cool. Yeah, if we have a look at the resources, like the actual resource material itself, I think so just if we scroll down just a little bit, you'll see the link there that you can head to, and that'll take you to the learning materials just underneath the picture, just there. Yep. Yay, cool. I think over on, and we obviously talked a little bit about the SMART concept last week, but I think if we go down, there is a nice little slide on you and your work priorities, just over in the left-hand side of the actual box there. Cool, up a little bit. Cool. So just you and your work priorities, you'll see. Yeah, beautiful. So this, like as you were mentioning before, Alison, obviously prioritizing your work is a really important part of being able to achieve, you know, the goals that you need to achieve on a daily basis, or even more of a long-term type of basis. And one of the tools that these resources really do talk about is what's called the priority matrix. Can you still hear me, Alison?
I can.
Right. It's just popped up because I was like, I just saw that it had deteriorating recording. But as you can see, you've got this priority. I have difficulty with that word. Priority matrix tool. Okay. So this is quite a good tool in being able to use if you really want to get the most out of your time, essentially. Now, I know that there is a question that's actually relating to this particular priority matrix tool, but as you can see on the screen there, you've got four components. So you've got important, you've got urgent, you've got not important, and not urgent. So when we look at this type of tool, I think sometimes what we do in a work environment is sometimes we get stuck and caught doing sometimes things that perhaps aren't as urgent or aren't as important. And we just do them because they're just a little bit easier. Sometimes we're afraid of the important and urgent tasks that we need to do. So we kind of put them on a back burner a little bit, I think. Um,
I think a good example of that is doing research and that sort of thing. Some people spend so much time researching and going through websites and looking for things. And in the end, you might just come out with one tiny bit of information, yet you might have spent hours on it. So that type of thing is a good example of when you are actually not utilising your time very well and not putting things into the right priority order.
Absolutely. And, with that type of pressure on yourself as well, quite often that does cause, quite a stressful environment for you. And it can be very difficult to, kind of move towards having that kind of work-life balance, which we'll probably talk a little bit about later on. But this is, quite a good tool from a theoretical component or a theoretical perspective. What you want to do is for something like this, you look at tasks that are important and tasks that are urgent, as opposed to tasks that might not be urgent and might not be important. So, what it's really getting you to do is it's really getting you to categorize the tasks that you have to do in a day and kind of naming them or laying them out, and you kind of get a bit of an idea as well. If they're important and urgent, I know I need to make them a priority. So so you obviously go ahead and you'll action those tasks first. Whereas you might find that perhaps there are other tasks that might not be as important or might not be as urgent, so they can be left to maybe later on in the day. But it really is kind of getting you to kind of think about what's most important and what are the most urgent tasks that I need to be able to complete, and then prioritizing those tasks so that you're, I guess, utilizing your time a little bit better, if that makes sense.
A good analogy that I had with somebody not so long ago was a lady who loved to do cooking at home. And she used to look at things like the priority matrix and consider it in the way of some of her more complex recipes that she used to deal with, and think, yes, because there's no point in me getting the filling for a pie ready if the actual first step that I need to do that is most urgent is do the preparation for the actual pie crust, because it's got to cook. While it's cooking, then I can go on and prepare the filling. And everything's got to be done in the steps. So if you just decided, okay, I'm going to make a pie without a recipe, and started mixing things up and then going, oh, well, I've got no base to put it in. So, well, that was just a waste of time, because I've now got to put the base together, wait half an hour for it to cook in the oven, wait another hour for it to cool down before I can put the filling in. So for things to actually come together and make sense, this is the reason that you need to put things into priority order. Otherwise, you do spend a lot of time doing things back to front or wasting a lot of time.
Yeah.
And in the business world, we don't have time to waste.
Yeah. Time just goes so quickly during a day as well. I mean, I find sometimes that those little things really add up. So things like, emails and phone calls, those things are probably things that could maybe wait wait till maybe the end of the day and might not be urgent or might not be important, but they're just instantaneously there. So, there is definitely that mindset that, you'll respond to them quicker, but maybe they're not necessarily as important. There are other things that you do, but it's just because technology is kind of right there in your face that, deal with me, deal with me, deal with me now. So, it can be very challenging to be able to use the day and use your time effectively. I think sometimes I find it a big challenge, actually, prioritizing a day.
It is, and I think it's something that everybody faces, whether they're, working, studying, running a household. Doesn't matter where you are. You need to, try and think logically.
And I also find, just as another little tool as well, if you are kind of looking at trying to prioritize your day, even the basic, even a very basic tool like a to-do list, I always find to be quite an effective tool as well. Visually you can see what you need to do, and then you can prioritize what you feel is the most important. And, obviously pending technology today as well. Alison, you've got a lot of technology out there that really is much more freely available to people to be able to help, manage their time and get a bit of structure in their day, if that makes sense too.
That's right. And it can vary from, there's a lot of people that really say that they don't want to use technology. A lot of people quite against it, but it's just a matter of starting small. Even things like a calendar option on your phone or on your computer to actually remind you of deadlines and things like that as they're coming up. You can start small with that type of thing, and then move through to everybody's on smartphones these days, and there are quite a number of really good apps that you can use, and I know some people that swear by a few of them. There's a one that's been around for a few years now called Remember the Milk. It's basically a task list and it's really simple to use. So if you've got, just a couple of really important things that you need to get done on certain days next week, you can pop them in this and it'll come up as a reminder for you. So there's no chance of you forgetting it. There's also apps like the Simple Mind mapping app. You can take notes, collect ideas, use it in brainstorming sessions. It helps to structure your thoughts. You can share it, analyse the information that you've put in there, add media to it. So it's quite a lot more technical. So some of them are really quite simple and some of them are very, very advanced. So have a look out there at what's on the market. Some of these apps are free even to, so you can have a go, put one on your phone, have a try of it for a couple of weeks. If you don't like it, delete it and try a different one. There's so much out there to use these days, and it's just a matter of start playing with them and see what works for you.
So what are your thoughts? Obviously, with the technology, in this day and age, everything's very instantaneous. I mean, do you think that technology is making, our work life easier, or do you feel it's presenting more challenges? What are your thoughts in terms of that? I mean, you think it's a effective, like those little apps and things like that, effective tool, or do they tend to kind of, create more challenges? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's going to depend, I think, completely on the person. I do have all my emails come through to my phone,
Yep.
Simply because I'm not always sitting at my desk at my laptop in my home office. I'm out and about a fair bit doing a lot of different things. But if somebody needs me for something and they email me because they're sitting at their laptop and trying to work through an assessment task and have hit a roadblock and need some assistance, they can email me. I'll see that email and I can sort of, it might be a very brief response back from my phone. We've all had those little response where it says, come from, somebody's iPhone or something like that. And keep it brief to, a couple of sentences because it's not quite as convenient as sitting at the laptop, but it certainly makes things easier for me because then I can feel, right, I have dealt with that and I've helped that person out so they don't have to wait 5 hours until I get back to my laptop in my home office. So things like that for me work really well. I don't use too many apps. I do still have a paper diary.
Yep.
I'm one of the few people on this planet that still do, but it's the first thing I look at every morning. It's the last thing I look at every evening, and everywhere I go, it's in my handbag. And, so if I make a medical appointment, it goes in the diary. If I, get a text message from a student saying, please help me, I need this, this, and this, and I might reply to them and say, okay, I need to do a bit of research and come back to you. I'll do that by tomorrow. I'll scribble a note straight in my diary. Okay, Sally needs research. And then it'll be in there for 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. So I'll know when I look at my diary at 8 o'clock in the morning that that's one of the things I need to do this morning.
Yeah.
So I still use a good old-fashioned diary, but there are a lot of other things out there. But as you said before, if you're going to be doing things like emailing and that sort of thing, again, put things into priorities. So I still get, a lot of sales emails and things like that. So I'll see something like that flick up. I'll just flick the page down and I won't even look at it because it's not a priority until the end of the day when I'm in my downtime. So I'll only look at the important business-related things throughout the workday, and then I can look at all the personal things out of business hours, if you like.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. And it seems that, like, I'm very similar to you in terms of, the planning style. I mean, I still work I'm a very visual person, so I have a visual calendar in my office space. I have my reminders pop up on my phone as well, but I seem like for my own self, and I guess it's really about your own self-awareness and how you work better. I have an actual visual calendar, so I use my calendar on my phone, but I find that my calendar on my wall sits better in my headspace. But having said that, I also work with another trainer, and his entire day is scheduled on his phone. Like from what time to what time, and he can't even could even process a visual thought, but the technology and for him the technology is very, very effective, and uses all those apps for every aspect, from arranging appointments and meetings to even things like recording hours for invoices and whatnot. I mean, it is quite amazing, in terms of what we have at our fingertips to make our lives easier. But I think at the same time, it's also knowing, what works for you, and trying different options for yourself until you find the option that works the most effective for yourself and you get the best results from. So, it's an interesting exploration in terms of the technology. It's evolving so incredibly quickly at the moment. So it's interesting to discuss it. Mm,
And working out, yes, what is suitable for you.
mm,
There's another, I use Dropbox on my phone, and there's certain documents and things like that that I'll make sure that I put into the Dropbox folder, so I have access to those on my phone even if I'm out and about. So classic example of that was last time I was travelling. I had scanned copies of all of our documents and passports and things like that I had on my phone. So if all of my things had gone missing while I was away, but I still had my phone, I had access to all of that. So that worked for me.
mm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely think Dropbox is a great option. I mean, I think that there is just so many great pieces of technology, and students, we're always obviously looking for new apps, and we're also very keen, if there's anything out there that you guys use that you swear by, that we haven't mentioned or we don't know about, we would love to know if there is anything else out there that you guys use. I mean, that'll only enhance our learning process a little bit. And I like to learn new things. And I'll try any app once. And as you said, Alison, if I don't like it, it'll just be deleted from my phone the next day. It's easy. It's a beautiful thing. Um,
Yes.
just also, obviously, another big component of this unit is when we talk about, the whole kind of concept of work-life balance. And it's quite interesting. You mentioned that had your emails going to your phone, like I think everybody else probably that works in business in Australia does have. Do you find that having that, do you try and make sure that doesn't impact on your work-life balance, or because obviously,
Yes, because I'm a bit rare in that I actually have two mobile phones. One is my personal one,
oh,
and it stays on. I don't have a home phone, and I have two very elderly sick parents, so my personal phone stays on 24/7. My business mobile, though, that's where all the emails come through,
right.
and I do switch that off before I go to bed at night, or at a certain point if I think I'm having a lovely social dinner, all my friends are coming over tonight, so I might actually turn that phone off, maybe at 8 o'clock or something like that. So that allows me to switch off
Yeah.
from that, so it's not coming through to my personal phone.
Which is, I think, really important, because you've obviously, when it comes to things like, having that work-life balance, and it's probably a bit of an older concept, but still kind of has quite an importance in terms of planning. Obviously making sure that you don't, that you're not doing, you're not, how do I say it? So you're using your tools wisely so that you're not putting too much pressure on yourself to have really long days that creep on into your personal space, because obviously having that balance is really important. But I really like the concept that you've drawn a boundary there, Alison, and you've kind of you've got those two phones, and you've turned your work mobile off after a certain time, because that's when that needs to be, that's your time and that's your space, and it's important for work not to creep in on that. And I think a lot of the time, with having the access to technology, sometimes we do have to draw, lines in the sands, and have boundaries around, answering emails on the weekend, or, answering emails while we're having dinner, or sending messages, because it can slowly, that technology can slowly start to creep into our personal space, and start to challenge the boundaries of work and personal life. Sometimes I think it's a very
That's right.
mm,
I actually had a role a few years ago where pretty much I needed to be available 24 hours. So, and there are some positions out there that are like that. So if that's the case, you do need to make sure though that you do have some downtime and make sure that somebody else can take over for, a 24-hour period or something like that to give you that break.
Mm.
I always had to be available by phone and emails on the phone 24 hours a day. And yet it definitely got very taxing after a while. And I had to learn to sort of, give that over. So one weekend a month, I'd say, okay, I need another staff member
Yeah.
to take the phone this weekend and manage. And if something really dire were to happen, they could contact me on my
Yeah.
personal mobile and say, this is something that only you can deal with,
Mm.
which never happened though. The world continues to turn even if you don't make yourself available. So that's when you do have to sometimes just stop yourself and take a big step backwards.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Just as a sub as well, there's a I don't know if we use a great resource out there. I think I don't know if you've heard of it. You probably have, Alison, but TED Talks.
Yes, they're fantastic.
They are really fantastic. There is a really great TED Talk out there by a gentleman by the name of Nigel Marsh, and he talks about work-life balance. And he's an Australian CEO. He's very interesting in his talk. And if you're interested, students, obviously his name's Nigel Marsh, and he's available on the TED Talks. But he took a year out to really focus on work-life balance. So it was very interesting. It's a very short 10-minute discussion about it. And, students, if you want to have a bit of a different concept of work-life balance and how work-life balance has changed, and more so the impact of not having a work-life balance, it's a great little talk and a great little resource, and it'll only take 9 to 10 minutes of your time, but thoroughly enjoyable if you ever get the opportunity to listen to him. It's very interesting from that perspective too. So yeah, very interesting.
And that's a resource that you can actually flick on there and do a bit of a search on a topic actually and sort of scroll through a lot of various talks that different professionals around the world may have recorded at various times. So I quite often flick onto that one because it can be quite inspiring, some of the things that you hear from these people. So it's a really good resource.
Yeah, I agree. And as we progress through the course as well, I think some of the additional supplementary material that you can see, available to you is there's a few little TED Talks that have been incorporated into them. I think they're probably TED Talks that we find are, as you mentioned, Alison, quite inspirational and support, different theories and maybe even new and emerging theories. So it is a really great time, and you just pop your headphones in, and it doesn't. I love them. I think they're really good. If I need a bit of a pep up, or if I'm looking for something different, I love kind of having a look and seeing what's on TED. So yeah, really great resource there.
There's a really good little one in this resource actually too. It's quite a brief one. I think it's only about a 5-minute talk by a gentleman called Zig Ziglar, who has a lot of very well-known sayings that people quite often have up on their walls and things like that. If you can stand his very strong American accent for the 5 minutes, he just puts things very simply. He talks about making choices and then planning to make better choices. So it's just a small one that pops up throughout this course, probably one of the things that you will see very shortly, and it's worth watching.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds yeah, definitely. They're really great, and I guess that kind of that whole thing about having resources, and it really is about you guys. And when we talk about things like professional development, it is really a process of I think continuous learning, and getting to understand what you need and who you are, and I guess essentially how you learn, and even using that information about yourself to be able to develop your skills a little bit further. The other portion of this unit really does talk about the importance of learning and really understanding, what your learning style is, so that you can kind of create opportunities for yourself that use those strengths, I guess. And I think there's a couple of different slides in the actual resource material about the whole self-discovery of learning and your learning style, which I'm sure you guys have all kind of come across in past training or perhaps even the workplace as well. So obviously that learning process is a big factor. And I think if we have a quick squiz at that learning resource there, Alison, I think we go down. I think it's just
Now we're
a
going
bit further
back
down on the scroll button. Just the different styles of just up a little bit. Actually, we can probably go straight into the actual activity on learning, and we can have a look at those questions if you like, and we can kind of review them. Let's have a look at those. We can review them and see. Ah, beautiful. That'll probably help lead us into the actual concepts around learning. Sorry, excuse me. Um, Obviously, look, for that third learning activity, which you can see on the screen now, it is called learning. So it's learning activity 3, and it's actually called learning. And I guess we'll go back to learning activity 2. But for this particular series of questions, what you've got here is you've got 5 questions, okay? And that first question, as you can see there, says most people have a preference for learning using one of the 3 main learning styles, so kinesthetic, visual, and auditory. It is also typical for learners to have a preference for a blend or combination of these styles. A learner with a preference for pictures, diagrams, and demonstrations to assist learning are, and then obviously you would choose which one you think. Now, I guess, Alison, in terms of your learning style, I mean, what's your learning style? Are you a kinesthetic learner, a visual learner, or an auditory learner?
I do believe I am visual.
Visual? Yep.
Yes, I think I've got a lot of I've got a real combination, and that's probably because of coming into this line of work. I tend to have become very adaptable, because obviously if I'm standing in front of a classroom of 30 students, I'm going to have a very big mixture of different people with different learning styles. So I tend to plan my lessons around being able to teach effectively to all different groups. So I think that's actually come across with me over the years, that I have bits and pieces of each of those, but predominantly I think I would be visual.
Visual, yeah. I remember
What about you?
when I first started out, many years ago when I was working in hotels, when I was in food and beverage, I was very much, for me, it was very much, I had a very strong kinesthetic learning style. So obviously very hands-on, kind of, wanted to do tasks. I didn't really want to, be given instructions. I kind of wanted to do. So that was a very kinesthetic style for me. And then, as you mentioned, obviously, as you evolve, I think sometimes your learning styles kind of change a little bit. And I too have become a very visual learner, with I think some elements in there of auditory as well. So I really like to listen to people, but at the same time, I really like to see, things. And I think I think I'm all 3, but I did definitely start off as a very kinesthetic learner.
Mm.
Yeah. So, I mean, and look, and question 2 for you guys out there as well, what is your learning style? So as you can see on the screen now, if you're not sure what your learning style is, then there's a little inventory that you can just do here. Okay. And what it will do is it will give you a little bit of a test to do so that you can determine whether or not you are a kinesthetic, a visual, an auditory, or a blend of these types of learners. So if you're not sure what your learning style is, definitely complete that learning inventory, and it will highlight to you exactly what the best option for you is. And once you know what your style is, it will really help you work out what you need in terms of development and what works better for you. Do you like the online stuff? Would you prefer face to face? Hopefully you really like online because you're doing an online course. So it'll just help you be able to, I guess, better plan for your own development if you do know what your best learning style is. And I think the rest of the questions there, question 3 says, please select 3 tips for visual learners from the following list. So all you really need to do is just kind of highlight three tips that visual learners will, would probably like to practice, or what makes visual learners visual. And I think the next one is three tips for your auditory learners. So you just have to choose three, and then just your three tips for your kinesthetic learners. So essentially, it is really just about making sure that you have a good grasp of the difference between auditory, visual, and kinesthetic learning processes. So this activity is really nice and simple, and it's probably a little bit more of a self-awareness activity, kind of for you to get to understand what your style is, and what options are better for you from a professional development phase, I guess. Now, I know also, as you talked about before, Alison, the actual resource material does talk about a couple of different, or has different terminology used for it for learners, doesn't it? For learning styles.
It does, it does. And if I can just flick, I'll just find the pages.
Sure.
So I'll just sort of flick through.
And I guess,
There we go.
yeah, so just have a look at, some of the different, because the resource material will probably just take you into a little bit more depth when it does come to things like learning styles. So, traditionally we do talk about auditory, kinesthetic, visual, and I think global learners, but those three are pretty much the predominant ones. But I know the resources do take you in just to a little bit more information into a little bit more of a dimension of each of those. So I think
And this is a good example, sort of this section here,
yeah.
where, if you would rather hear somebody say it or actually see a person's face as they're actually speaking to you rather than physically just reading everything off the screen, flick through these ones. And most of them you'll find maybe 2 or 3 minutes long, but just physically actually talk you through different steps and different things that that are there.
And it's interesting. It's probably like, online learning and this type of learning, having this kind of blended learning where we're doing, you've got the option of having your online component where you can work through all your resources, but you've also got, the auditory component with the webinars. I think there's a real trend now towards things like that blended learning option, because there's so many students and so many people out there that aren't just one specific style of learner, but they kind of embody a lot of different varieties. Hence the reason why we have, this type of blended learning option, because it's giving people more of what they need.
That's right. They've got the option to choose what suits them best. And, again, here there's actually some articles that you can get. So if you do absolutely sit there and love researching different things, have a look at the articles as well and more videos. So it's got quite a range of different things there.
Definitely.
Just going to go through. I should have written down beforehand which slide it was, but there's not too many to go through. There's our SMART goals again. I told you it would pop up again.
Always pops up. It never stops popping up. Even even in 25 years, it's still going to pop up. But it's a really great basis. And as we talked about last week, the whole concept of that SMART goal is really just kind of like pivotal to any kind of business, any place that you work in, anything that you do. You'll have SMART goals that are probably in the form of things like KPIs or KRAs, and they're more of a business-based SMART goal. But in business, it is incredibly important that obviously you do have an understanding of what's expected from you and what you need to achieve. So it'll echo through pretty much everything you do. Everything you do.
That's right.
Learning style, there it is. Yay! Great. So as you can see there, Alison, as you've mentioned, you've got obviously the very traditional kind of ways of learning or having learning styles, which is your auditory, your visual, and your kinesthetic. But what you've got here is I think it's what is it, Kolb's learning styles. And if you want to know a little bit more about these, you can definitely click on that link. But this particular theorist, David Kolb, talks about things like convergent, divergent, and Alison and I did have a conversation that they are definitely names of movies. Yes. Assimilation.
Haven't heard of the movie Assimilation yet, though, so that might be the next big one to come out.
You know what? I would laugh if that was the next actual name of that series. Okay. So, these are obviously kind of, taking it to the next level in terms of learning styles. And if you want to have a little bit more of an exploration around it, yeah, as you've highlighted previously, Alison, there is that link to really break down, some of those different modes of learning and exploring them all.
So out of those ones, which would you think you would be?
I think I'm divergent, watching and feeling. I'm a bit of a marshmallow when it comes to. I'm a bit of a I rely on things like feelings, like both on like a physical sense of feeling, but also the feeling of the energy in rooms and things like that. But I also like to watch people when they respond and when they interact in training as well. I think I gain so much value from doing that, but I think that's just my style, really. So I think I'm divergent. I think I'm the second movie, Divergent. What about you?
I would probably say for me accommodative.
Okay.
I'm definitely, yes, I'm a touchy-feely sort of a person. So, yeah, when you put things into that perspective, I think feeling and doing sounds a lot like me.
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely that component, I think, of being a trainer as well, that concept of, learning through feeling, because I think you really rely on those types of things sometimes when you are doing a lot of face-to-face delivery and you are doing a lot of training. I mean, I think you can have all this knowledge and you can be, you can have all this knowledge, you can be sharing all this knowledge in this moment, but I think definitely the response or that feeling element and how you feel in that process and how others feel, I think is quite an important part of our role.
It is.
Yeah. So look, yeah, you guys can have a bit more of an exploration of that if you like, and you can just have a bit of a click on that link, and that'll kind of break those modes of learning down a little bit more for you. But do you want to head back to that activity number 2, Alison, and we'll have a bit of a squeeze through that learning activity 2, which is work priorities. Lovely. Oh, look at that. I see something. I see a YouTube clip. Okay, so I think this one has, I think have we got about 6 questions in learning activity? 2?
7.
7 questions. Lovely. Now, as you can see, kind of these questions are really focused around what we were discussing at the beginning of the session. So that very first question says, list your current professional activities using the priority matrix tool shown below and prioritize your tasks, upcoming professional development meetings, and etc. So again, what you'll do is it's really using that priority matrix tool. Important, urgent, not important, not urgent, I think it was, and having a look at maybe some of the tasks that you need to complete in your day or in the next, say, maybe 2 to 3 weeks, and kind of using that tool to be able to categorize those tasks a little bit. Now, what are your suggestions, Alison, if the guys aren't working and they haven't got professional activities from a work perspective, how would you think would be the best way to approach this particular activity?
Well, personally, I think actually using the goals that you're setting for yourself here with the course and start actually prioritising how you're going to spend your time to make sure that you're allocating the time that you need to be getting through the various resources and activities so that you can actually achieve your goal of moving through the course at the pace you want to set for yourself.
Right.
Because that comes under professional development. So even though you're not in a workplace, you're still doing professional development for yourself at the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great idea. So, so we would obviously want, even though that it is saying current professional activities, we still do expect an answer there from that perspective, Alison, as you mentioned. So try not to leave your questions blank. Even if you aren't working, we still do need you, to think about, your commitment to the course or your activities in context to this course, because that would be ideal. And make sure you do apply, and you really do answer each of the questions. Just because, yeah, okay. We need you to answer all of them. So question 2 says, analyze your professional activities and goals and discuss what the business objectives are for you and the team. Then consider your priorities. Do your activities reflect these goals and objectives? Please discuss yes or no. That is a big question. What's professional activities? Okay, so I'm assuming that what we do is, using the information that you've given in your priority matrix tool, where you've listed your current professional activities, then now we want you to analyze those professional activities, if you are working, just how they factor in with the business objectives. So do your activities that you can complete in the work environment, do they meet your organization's business objectives? And I guess from a personal perspective, if you are doing and you're analysing your professional activities in terms of your course, are they in line with perhaps, your own goals from a personal level?
So your goal might be, yes, to complete the course by a certain time frame, but also let us in, I think a bigger picture view of that would be what it is you want to achieve after. So why are you actually doing this particular course? Where do you hope that it will take you? What are your long-term goals further down the track? So yes, step number 1 will be to complete the course, but you're doing it why? Where do you want it to take you?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Because I think when we talked about SMART goals last week, we talked about having maybe goals that you set for yourself over a 3-month or a 90-day period. So in order to maintain that motivation and make sure that you're on track, having those smaller goals in between will lead you and hopefully get you to a point where where you've aligned them to bigger goals and bigger objectives in your life. Yeah.
So yeah, that's why this is sort of important to, yes, think about the goals and objectives and make sure that all those steps you're taking along the way, everything that you've prioritised to get you there, has a purpose in helping you reach that goal.
Absolutely. Now, if we have a look at question 3, this is probably the first time that you've seen one of these lovely questions, but what you want to do is, you've got a little YouTube clip there, and all we want you to do is have a bit of a look at the YouTube clip. And then there's 2 components of the question. It says, what did you learn from watching the YouTube video in relation to technology and planning priorities? And what technology could you be using to increase your effectiveness and manage your priorities and commitments? So all you need to really do is have a look at that short clip and tell us what you learned about technology and planning. Okay. So the second part of the question is therefore asking you what technology could be used to increase your effectiveness and manage your priorities and commitment. And Alison, you gave a couple of great examples in terms of some apps that you could definitely use. I would be looking here for actual specific things. I mean, I'm kind of expecting more than just a phone or a computer. I'm probably expecting, if you're going to tell me about a phone, I would be more inclined to get you to look at specific apps. And if you're using things from a computer perspective, specific pieces of software, I would probably want you to go into a bit of depth when it comes to this particular question. Alison, how do you feel about that?
Yes, and so if you're going to, name an app that you've heard of, do a little bit of research on it and then tell us why it would be beneficial to you and what you would actually achieve by using that particular piece of technology.
Absolutely. Now, there is another, and I know one of the components of the assessment a little bit later on down the track is really about exploring the options in terms of technology and apps and software and all of those types of things. So it'll get you into a good frame of mind, and it'll give you a nice structure or a nice start to that assessment, because you will be asked to really look and review at different pieces of specific technology there. So it's a good starting point just to get your head around, okay, what specifically do I use? And then obviously question 4 is, what is the purpose of using technology to plan and prioritize? So, why do we use technology to plan and prioritize? And I can think of lots of different reasons why, and I think we've discussed a lot of the reasons why this afternoon.
And yeah, so that there may be, a variety of answers there. So again, what is it that you personally think would be the main purpose for you in your role or in your position, or even, as we said before, if you're not working, what sort of technology do you think you could start using that will be beneficial to you? And so, what is the purpose of you choosing those?
Yep, absolutely. Great. Just moving on to question 5, 6, and 7. In 5, 6, and 7, the questions ask you about work-life balance. So, from my perspective, these questions are actually quite reflective again. So, what does work-life balance mean to you? So, I would like to see a theoretical approach to this type of question, because it's really asking, what does work-life balance mean for you? So for you as an individual, when you hear the word or the combination of words work-life balance, what does that mean for you? And people have a lot of different meanings around work-life balance, and I would like to see something nice and personalized in there that's kind of unique to you.
So yeah, it's, as you said before, very, very reflective. So what you currently do, what you think you could potentially change. So this is very reflective on you as a person, and hopefully after sort of putting pen to paper or fingertips to the keyboard in answering these sorts of questions, it may help you in developing some new plans along the way that you can move on with.
Absolutely, absolutely, and question number 6 and 7 actually kind of gets you to start exploring those kind of concepts. What do you do to maintain a work-life balance? I.e., when working in an office, you may choose to cycle to work or go to the gym after work to balance a sedentary office position. It says, provide an example of where you have achieved work-life balance and what you did to achieve it. So, a lot of different people have a lot of different ways in which they maintain a work-life balance. So what do you do to maintain it? And provide us with an example of where you actually achieved that balance and how you achieved it. Did you decide that you were going to take up a musical instrument to be able to help balance your life a little bit? Or, did you decide that you were going to take up running to be able to run all of that stress off that you kind of experience in the day, and did it work for you? So here we want you to give us an example of what you did to help you achieve your work-life balance. And this is always fun for me. It's really interesting. People are very different in what they'll do. So, have a bit of an exploration here, a bit of self-awareness, just to kind of give us a bit of an idea as to, what you do to be able to kind of get you through and keep that balance in your life.
So it's very individual, and another way we get to know a bit more about you.
Exactly right. Another way. And that very last question says, thinking about your current work-life balance now, what are some of the things you believe you want to change to maximise your work-life balance in the future? Again, a very, very kind of reflective question. What do you consider where you're at now, and what are some things you want to do to maybe change your work-life balance? Is there something you would like to commit to? Do you want to decide that after 7 o'clock or 7:30, mobile phones, iPads, everything's off, and you're just going to enjoy a nice dinner with your family or, your friends? Are you going to allocate specific time to maybe doing, like having a massage once a week or something like that, just to enhance your, what you want to do and how, what you want to bring to your own life, and kind of like honor yourself a little bit.
I'm looking forward to seeing some of the responses to that. I might get some great ideas as well.
Absolutely. People are very unique how they kind of Yeah, a lot of people. I think it's really important to know what you want to do, or what something, or what it is that takes the edge off a little bit. Sometimes, helps you switch off a bit, because sometimes it's very difficult to, walk back home at night into your house and not kind of take the stress with you of work. So, what do you do to kind of keep that stress out of your home, and make sure that your home life is nice and balanced and full of the things that you want it to be full of. So, yeah.
And we don't realise that we do have to even plan for the downtime.
Mm.
So it's got to be part of your plan.
That's exact. I have this rule in my. This is a rule that I have always had in my life. So, between the hours of officially 6 a.m. and probably about 8:30 in the morning, I am not contactable at all. Okay, so I have a rule between 6 and 8:30 in the morning. That's my time, and probably 6 days a week, mainly Monday to Friday, but probably on the Saturday and Sunday. I go into the park and I train with a group of people, but whatever happens, I don't usually compromise on that time. That's my time, because the rest of the day, belongs to, other people, or I'm delivering training. So that is my rule. They're my boundaries to help me have a good day and get my head ready for the day. So that's my rule. Always be my rule.
And I'm sure it works. It's a great idea.
It very much does, except when I'm got to run very fast and I get very tired and I feel like when I get home I need to go back to sleep, but I have a coffee instead, Alison.
That's what I was going to say. That's what coffee's for.
That's right. Thank God for coffee. So look, those are the two learning activities for this week. You've got obviously your learning activity. So learning activity 3 was just really about your learning styles, and this one here about work priorities. So hopefully you'll get the opportunity to work on those over the next week or so. Obviously next week, Alison and I will move through learning activity 4, which is about 360-degree feedback, and learning activity 5, which is professional growth. So by the end of these 3 weeks, you'll have enough information to be able to hopefully, answer all of those learning activities, which means you just have time to focus in on the assessment tasks, which we'll probably be reviewing after we've done these workshops. So, as usual, guys, look, if you have any questions, you can email myself or you can email Alison and Adam when he gets back from his leave. We are more than happy to assist you. You can send us a message through the portal and it'll come straight through to our email addresses. So feel free just to reach out if you need to. We're here to support you and help you through this process. So if there's anything you need, just give us a yell.
And we look forward to talking to you all again next week.
Absolutely. So have a great week. And Alison and I will be back for installment 3 probably next Monday or Tuesday, but we'll let you know the times. So we look forward to talking to you guys.
Thanks, guys.